God. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the June Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and thank you guys for joining us on this rainy day. My name is Taylor Fudge. I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, and as usual, we've got a very full agenda. It's my goal to get everyone out of here early, so be thorough, but also be mindful of your time when you are speaking to the commission today. As a reminder, please limit individual conversations during this meeting. This will ensure that commission members and applicants can hear one another. Please remain quiet until you're called upon, and when you do speak, please state your name and address for the record up here at the podium. Before the commission votes on each item, we will ask if any members of the public wish to speak. Anybody speaking will be given 3 minutes to relay information to the commission. If we must stop this meeting for any reason and we're unable to continue, all remaining items will be moved to the next regularly scheduled Historic Preservation Commission meeting, which will take place on Wednesday, July 6th at 2 p.m. right here in Council's chambers. The agenda and documents for today's meetings are located on the PrimeGov website. If you're following along, you can select Agenda on the right side of Historic Preservation Commission meeting to see the items being discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting are posted online and were shared with commission members. At this point, new materials may not be shared with the commission, so if you brought materials with you today that's new information for us, please keep them at your seat as we cannot accept them and review. And I'll repeat that again. We cannot accept new information in today's meeting. Desiree, can you please call roll?
Commissioner Fudge.
Present.
Commissioner Ryman Phillip.
Present.
Commissioner Corbin. Commissioner Farzana. Commissioner Jordan. Commissioner Meacham. Commissioner Milner.
Present.
Commissioner Poore.
Present.
Commissioner Ramey.
Okay, sounds like we've got quorum. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda. For the sake of time, we will ask that anybody who's unfamiliar with the process, please refer to that procedures section. There are 2 items that we specifically like to call out regarding the meeting process. They revolve around certificates of appropriateness and appeals. Regarding certificates of appropriateness, after an application is approved and the 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the certificate of appropriateness to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design review, inspection, or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Regarding appeals to the Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustments. Katie, do we have any news from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer?
Only thing to report is that our parking validations that we give you guys after the meeting now work for the Arts District parking garage. Woohoo. So if you would like to, for future meetings, park there instead of at the Sheridan Walker garage, then we can validate your parking. And I'm sorry that we didn't let you know ahead of this meeting and could have saved you some steps in the rain, but that's all I have.
It's all right. We'll live this month. Okay. Have the commissioners had a chance to review the minutes from the, was it the May 4th meeting? And do we have any questions or perhaps a motion to modify or accept?
I'll make a motion to accept the May 4th minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Poore, second by Commissioner Ryman Phillip. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Uh-oh. Okay,
We don't seem to have the PrimeGov screen up.
It all just shut down. Oh, there we go.
Go back to computer.
There we go. Yeah, so push computer on the buttons next to your computer screen. And then push the vote button whenever you're at that screen.
So it doesn't appear, the PrimeGov screen is not displaying and I'm not entirely sure why. But I think we just need to verbally confirm that it was unanimous or
Yeah,
read off
can
the
we-
votes. Is
Can we
that
do a verbal
acceptable?
vote? Okay.
And we actually don't, you all voted successfully, so we don't need to do a full verbal vote. We just need to verbally confirm that it was a unanimous approval.
Okay. Well,
So,
the minutes were accepted via unanimous approval. We will move on to code enforcement. Katie, anything from code enforcement?
nothing in particular to report. As always, the code enforcement report is included in your packet. If anyone has questions about specific cases, you can reach out to HP staff or to the city's action center for more information.
Okay. Anything, any continuance announcements or requests?
We have no continuance announcements and no new requests at this time.
Let's see, any dilapidated structures or national register nominations?
None of either this month.
Okay, perfect. Looks like we've got 3 items on the consent docket. Look around at the commissioners here. Does anybody have anything they want to pull or take a look at? Do we have a motion to approve the consent docket?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent docket.
I second the motion.
Moved by Commissioner Ryman Phillips, seconded by Commissioner Meacham. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Desiree, I'm not seeing any, it shows the voting buttons, but doesn't show us what's happening afterwards. What's that? I'm sorry. Verbal vote? Okay. Let's do it verbally.
Commissioner Fudge,
Yay.
Commissioner Raymond Phillip,
Aye.
Commissioner Meacham,
Aye.
Commissioner Milner,
Aye.
Commissioner Poore.
Aye.
Okay. The consent docket was approved unanimously. If you're on the consent docket, congrats, your project is ready to go. You were approved. You have the option to stick around for the remainder of the meeting, or you can head out at this point. We do have 10 cases for individual consideration, the first of which is HPCA 2100174 at 710 Northwest 20th Street.
So before we continue with that, so this is the screen that should be showing the PrimeGov presentation screen, but it's not. So I'm just going to check with Angela or Desiree. We don't have our usual technical support from public information, apparently. All I know to do is to show that screen through the tablet, but I'm not clear on why it's not pulling up the appropriate PrimeGov presentation. So I think if you all are able to vote in PrimeGov, and if you're able to see the votes on your screen in PrimeGov, then we can just confirm that verbally. We don't have to do each vote
I can
verbally.
only see my own particular vote on
Okay.
this, not everybody's
Okay.
votes.
Desiree, will you be able to confirm? Okay, all right, we'll do that.
Okay. Let's see. Looks like the applicant is present. Please state your name and address for the record.
It's just as, as she's signing in, this is an application the commission has seen before. The only remaining item on this one that wasn't previously approved is the construction of the trellis or the fence structures. Staff did not receive any revised information since the previous meeting, and this case is out of continuances. So we had recommended denial at this time. It had been continued with the request that changes be made to qualify for administrative approval. But the applicant's here and can answer any questions you all have.
Okay. Perfect.
And my name's Kat Crawford, 710 West 20th Street. And I did bring handouts, this is what I have already submitted, I submitted it to.
We actually have that information here with us. Yep, I believe we've got that. Yep, it's in the packet. Okay. So talk to us a little bit about this project. Staff has recommended a denial on it. Looks like no changes were made to the trellis between last meeting and this meeting?
Yes.
What do we need to know
Part
now?
of the issue is that the wood is screwed in to the metal part, so it cannot be put back up. So once I take it down, that is the change. I'd also talked with Angela about maybe taking it down and taking a picture, but the two things were that she had said not to make any changes unless I had permission from this group. And then the other thing is, once it's done, it can't be undone. So the idea was to build a support, which is extremely, it's an extremely narrow piece of wood that is actually completely hidden by the trees. If you look at picture number 4 here, that is a tree in front of it. That's something I went to TLC and consulted with, and they said to put up this juniper tree. It's small, and will maintain that shape, so it's not going to be invasive into the other areas. So it does completely conceal it from the street. And then the idea was to have a trellis growing up on the wood part. Now, if the solid piece of wood is a problem, you can see in number 2, that's my neighbor that lives 3 doors down that has a solid one on picture number 2. Then my neighbor that lives 5 houses down has the red number 1, which is separated. So I am here today to see if you would consider the removal of some of those boards, but still leaving some of the boards up so that the vines could have something to climb up on. And then it would be a green space between the houses. So if there would be any consideration for removing some of the boards, then that is what I'm asking if I can do that at this point.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners on this particular project? I think for me, I struggle with the location of this particular trellis. On the staff report, it is specifically noted that trellises are appropriate when they are not visible from the public right-of-way. These seem very, very visible to me.
Yes, but you don't have pictures. I have submitted pictures with the trees in front, and this number 4 is a picture with the tree in front of it, and it does completely cover it from the street view. Plus the vines would do that.
I definitely appreciate
Yes.
that particular approach. I think for me, though, personally, I don't feel like this is an appropriate application for that particular trellis in that particular location.
Okay.
And so I would support a denial, but I don't know where
I did meet with my neighbors on all 3 in front, on 2 sides. They also signed a petition that I've already submitted, that they're in approval of what was put up. So I don't know if that factors in, if the neighbor's opinion factors into it or not. And I do think with the removal of boards, that it would be much less intrusive.
Sure.
But I would like to grow something there, and the winds are just too high to support without something there. So if I could keep maybe every other board, it would still provide some support, but it would be covered by green. And it was approved by all of the neighbors that are around it. So with that modification, would it be a possibility?
I still struggle with just the location of them in particular, and quite frankly, there's several things that are challenging on this particular project. This is just one in particular that really sticks out to me as a particular challenge. Again, I don't think that the guidelines necessarily support the trellis in this location or support a trellis at all in this location specifically with that kind of design and high style. Again, I don't know that there's a whole lot of leeway, in my opinion, to support approval of that particular trellis in that particular location. Again, though, curious.
It was undertaken with, the wood itself is called a rough cut piece of pine. So it's like an artistic look. So my intention was to accentuate, to beautify that area rather than anything other than that.
I certainly see kind of where you're heading with it. I think it would probably be appropriate in a place that's not a historic preservation district. Again, I can't support an approval on this one.
Okay. And then there's the fact that, I mean, there are the other two structures, just, these are right down the street, both of these. So it looked as if when I moved in, this was something.
I typically do not take other projects into consideration when we're looking at specific projects in particular. I don't know what the circumstances were on any of those. I don't know if they actually went before commission and were approved, not approved. So I typically don't use that type of precedent to help make a decision.
Yeah, I was just saying that in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
in this same block, these structures are in the houses.
Sure.
So I think it's in keeping with our little neighborhood block.
I tend to agree with you that I don't feel that it meets the guidelines. I think that you could probably, I think the overall goal is for screening, right, purposes. So I feel like you could achieve that with some of use the shrub instead of the boards. You know, use the green plant that you're showing here instead to achieve the same kind of wall. But I don't think that meets, as it is, our guidelines, and I just, unfortunately, I'm fairly new to the commission, so I have an obligation to carry forth the guidelines that I was provided. I have no idea what happened in the past, and I can't go on what happened down the street, so.
Katie, would you mind reminding me on this house, this is actually a good image to look at, a fence would be allowed past the front, or, you know, is it 40%? Was that the?
A solid fence would be required to be set back 40% of the length of the side yard. A fence that is 75% transparent, or more than 75%, would be required to be set back 6 feet from the front wall of the house.
Okay.
Okay, so along those lines, 75% would leave me with 4 boards, which I could at least have enough board to support a vine without it blowing. So,
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering is you've got a series of, you know, panels, which they do resemble to me more of a fence, you know, than a trellis right now. But if you're allowed to do a fence, I'm not sure what the height, those look kind of tall. I'm not sure, it's 6 foot, right?
The fence
For
limit,
a
the height
fence.
limit is
Yeah.
6 feet.
I mean, I think that would help achieve some of your privacy concerns maybe. I'm just wondering if maybe there's a way, you know, for the area behind that front setback. I'm not sure that it would meet the guidelines for that front window, if that makes sense. And maybe you could do
it
some
is 6
landscaping or
feet back
something.
from the front corners of the building. It's
Yeah.
6 feet back. So perhaps if I can meet the 75% transparency, which I guess would be like 4 or 5 boards.
Yeah, although I think it'd be maybe too tall still, technically.
Sorry, I couldn't.
It may be too tall still, technically.
Okay,
If
well,
it
I could
had that
take-
75%
take the
transparency,
boards.
but, yeah.
I could take 2 boards off of the top and still have the support for the vines.
I'm just wondering, I mean, if you're allowed to do the fence in the back, that back part, I mean, that would, you know, kind of do a fence instead of the trellis, the way you have it, and then come up with a different solution for the front like you're proposing, whether it's more transparent, it's landscaping, something that's approvable by staff, you know?
I think one of the challenges we have today is that we are out of continuances,
Right.
I believe. there could be a denial without prejudice, correct? And that would allow her to be able to come back with an alternative plan
The,
or a new application?
Yes, so you all could deny with prejudice, which would mean that that the applicant could reapply with something different than what you've already seen. You could approve it with specific conditions that she submit revisions to what's proposed that meet guidelines for administrative approval of a fence.
I don't want to put too much on her plate, but I was thinking maybe if you said, okay, we'll prove it with a condition that you have to have that you have to meet the conditions for a fence, whatever specific those are, with the setback, with the transparency where required, with the height. That gives you the option, just a little bit more time to, come up with a solution that might, maybe even integrate part of what you've already built, into a fence, and you wouldn't have to just start over, and it would meet the guidelines. And if it didn't, or you couldn't get there, and there's some disagreement with staff, then you could reapply or, go from
Even
there.
if we deny, you can still continue to work with staff to find a solution that can be approved administratively. And that sounds like that's where it's headed. I think that I would probably go ahead with the denial, but then you would have to understand that with no prejudice, if you wanted it with prejudice, if you wanted to come back with a completely new idea, that would be good. But I would encourage you just to work with staff until you found a solution that they could approve. And I think that continuing to call the structure a fence, a trellis is just really misleading because it does not fit our definition of a trellis. And so it sounds like that a fence would be more appropriate because we can't put a trellis on the side of the house. So given that, it would be better just to go back to the fence guidelines. And you could do a wire fence, 6 feet back. And if you're saying that you need support for bushes, I don't think there's a limit on how close you can put your fence to the house, is there? You can still put the fence like a foot or 2 feet or whatever distance this is, 18 inches, and do a wire fence, and you could use that fence then, a wire or metal, to, support your shrubs. So you would have that, and that would be the direction I personally would recommend, because you'll have the support, you can come all the way up to 6 feet, but staff can only approve what's in the guidelines. So they're just never going to be able to approve this and the height and the whole thing. It's just going to have to follow the guidelines.
okay.
So
The only reason I didn't do wire was because I thought it would not be as safe. I have small children,
Right.
1-year-old and a newborn right next to me, and they come across because I've planted flowers in that bed there, and I let the kids on both sides pick the zinnia flowers.
I understand you have a lot of concerns, and I think they're valid.
Yeah.
But for this commission and for our guidelines, you're just going to have to follow the guidelines in this particular instance. It's just, I think, we understand we hate to have to, really the worst situation that we're in always is something that has already been done, because then we've not been able to give you guidance in the beginning and save you money and all of this time, because I know you have to take off time from work and everything. And but I think the best way to conserve your time is to just communicate with staff, because you all can do that, through the phone and email, and come to some conclusion that you can get them to approve administratively. So I would probably go ahead and make a motion to deny with prejudice HPCA 22-00035. No, that's not it. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page.
Commissioner Meacham,
Aye.
can we check in with citizens? And I think
Oh, okay, I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Poore has one more question too, please.
Go ahead.
So if we deny with prejudice, she could come back with an application as a fence.
She wouldn't need
To
one
you.
if she wouldn't need an application if it follows the guidelines because staff could give it administrative approval, correct?
So if we deny with prejudice, she can come back with a new application for something different than this. And we could either administratively approve that, or it could be forwarded to the commission, just as if she applied to, build a garage or something completely unrelated to this. We would treat it like a brand-new application, but she could not reapply for a year for what you see before you today.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that she was still having to submit a new application.
Yeah.
I guess,
Is
could
it-
we not just approve with a condition that she meets the fence guidelines, and if she doesn't, then it's kind of denied by default, and then she wouldn't have to reapply, or would for some reason, would that not make sense in this case?
Or could
Well,
you
her
approve with the
application is
condition that
for
I remove
Trellis.
75%, only leave 25% of the wood? I do think the wood is safer than the wire for children passing through.
I think the concern is also the height, the distance, and making
Right.
sure
I mean,
all of those meet
take
those
from the height, like, you could
guidelines.
mandate that I take 4 boards or 3 boards from the top, which would make
I
it
think
quite a
all
bit
that sounds
shorter.
like it could be reasonable. I think that could be, something that would maybe fit the guidelines, I guess, we don't have that proposal in front of us, and we don't have, all
But that's only
those-
because I can't physically take those down to show you. But if you
Mm-hmm.
were to approve and mandate, you have to take 4 boards off the top, which is going to put it at I don't know, but much lower.
So I think that the concern is that typically you would document a project that you had not yet done through things like a site plan and drawings. And the commission doesn't have those in front of them to evaluate. Staff doesn't have that in front of us to evaluate, to be able to say, yes, this meets the guidelines for administrative approval. So you could approve it with the condition that new documentation be submitted that meets all relevant guidelines for administrative approval. I don't know that I'm hearing we may or may not be able to get there. It would just be a matter of staff working with the applicant towards something that can be administratively approved. And if we can't come to an agreement on that, then it would have to be a new application and it would have to come back to the commission. So it's really, either way, kind of the same path.
I would be fine with that approach as long as it met all of the guidelines for the fence requirements. So I would be happy to make a motion for that, but you would have to work with staff and meet all of the guidelines. And you'd have to provide that, like she said, that appropriate documentation to show that it had the right setback, the right height, the drawings, everything.
And the only reason I was throwing that out as a different option is because I think, you still have to reapply, which is kind of a hassle, and I think there's a small fee. So, if she had a proposal that could meet the fence guidelines, then might as well get it done under this,
I just don't want to mislead you in that I don't hear any of the commissioners or staff encouraging you to use any portion of the existing fence trellis. That using that material or leaving it in the same place and removing boards, I don't see how you can get there from there, and I don't know if anybody else has any other ideas of reusing what you've got. So, I think that I just want to make sure that any of that option that you've got going on right now does not appear to be, viable as a possible solution. Just because the width of the boards and everything else, the height of the metal, it would just be hard to cut it down. Even if you cut it down, you'd still have, I think, it would be
Without the
difficult.
wood, it would just be a support for the trees that I already have in place.
The
So-
metal, just leave or I don't know, what is the upright piece? I'm sorry.
That's a metal,
It's metal.
yes. And for safety reasons, because I'm in the law, I don't want to be absolutely safe with my structures. It's in cement, and so it will not fall over or harm anyone.
So, anyway.
It seems like some of what she has could be modified into an approvable fence. Not all of it probably, but some of it. So I think, there might be a path to where, without starting from scratch or tearing everything out, you could just make some modifications and meet the fence guidelines
So
officially.
I guess that's the question. Do you want to try and get the fence to be within the guidelines of a fence, or would you prefer a denial and start over with a new application process?
And I think Angela had something to say, so it might be helpful to hear what.
Based on the site plan that I have and the present location of these items, I do not have the ability to administratively approve any portion of this without moving it back and beyond the rear wall of the porch. So to do that, we'd have to take out at least 2 of your posts and move them to the other end.
It is 6 feet back from the corner of the house.
It still has to be behind the porch regardless, and we're not behind the porch. We're forward of the back wall of the porch. So to bring it down to 6 feet, relocate 2 posts, and then remove a large portion of it, that would be a significant rehab of both this one and the one on the other side.
I do not see a path forward with this particular fence and trellis situation that we've got. I do think we need to move the meeting along too. Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Okay. Do we have a motion from the commission?
I would like to try to make it into a fence and just take the board off.
I don't, well,
And I could even,
I think what we just heard
Move it
from
back.
Angela is that's not, that turning that into a fence is not
you said if I
possible.
move it back 2 posts. Okay, okay. I would still prefer that. I think it's a good structure. I can grow some green on there. It is in keeping with the same structures in the neighborhood. I would like to try for the fence modification, if possible.
So we do have a motion to deny with prejudice, so we would need to have that withdrawn and, or a second to that, one or the other.
I'm glad to withdraw my motion, but I feel like I have to warn you that I still don't hear very much support for reusing materials and being able to get a fit for the guidelines in that particular situation. Because using any of the boards is going to not get you to your 75% open area. And so therefore, you're going to have to start back on the 40%. So the only suggestion, only thing I personally could see would be if you lowered the post to 6 feet and used wire between them. Other than that, I don't really see how you could get to where you're going. But if somebody wants to make a motion.
I'm willing to use the wire.
What?
I just don't think it's as safe for small children.
Like I've told you, I understand all of your concerns, but it's not possible for us to approve, I think, anything that you're thinking of right now. I will withdraw my motion and you all can make a motion.
What about just taking it down to 4 boards?
I don't think this fence in this current structure works. I think it has to be denied or a whole, I think it has to be denied. I cannot see a path forward for that structure working as a fence in its current location and its current configuration.
I'd like to try to modify it if possible. I'm willing to cut it back.
Yeah,
as
I'll make a
extreme
motion
as
to approve
necessary.
HPCA 2100174, item 2, with the specific findings as noted in the staff report and with the condition that any trellis, fence, any structure that's included under this item meet all relevant guidelines as outlined in the historic preservation guidelines, as reviewed by staff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Raymond Phillip, second by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Or if we can. Okay. That motion was passed.
Thank you.
Best of luck with the fence project. Okay, we'll move on to item number HPCA 2100182 at 301 Northwest 25th Street. Is the applicant present?
So this is located in Shepherd, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Brooke and Michael Hines for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct garage elective. This is an application that was heard by the, did I skip one? I did skip one. I'm sorry, guys. 182. I was like, that is not the right house. 301 Northwest 25th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Lori Klaus for certificate of appropriateness to 6, alter corbels to repair required, and 7, replace porch floor structure required. This is work that has been in whole or in part completed, or at least initiated. It is all work that, if done in kind to match the existing condition, could be approved by staff. We've recommended continuance because the work is not proposed to be done to match the historic condition as documented in photographs of the structure.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? My guess is we should probably look at a continuance on this one. Angela, what's on your
She
mind?
actually lives in Pittsburgh,
Oh,
so
okay.
she won't be attending the meetings. The braces at the roof extend beyond the edge of the roof by approximately 1.5 inches, and her proposal is to cut those back and then recap them, paint them in order to repair. The work to those has not yet been done, and she is willing to work with us towards administrative approval if the commission believes that 1.5 inches difference would not be consistent with the historic criteria. And then as far as the porch floor, that work has been done. You have photo documentation of that both before and after. And she has requested that you look at it carefully and see if that one relocation of a board on that porch is significant enough to be visible from the street, and if you believe that it needs to be altered to match the historic condition. So the white painted feature is the historic condition. The unpainted floor feature is the currently existed and repaired feature.
Angela? I have a question. If it's only 1.5 inches, what is the reason for not wanting to go ahead and put that there? Because when you look at the photograph, it did have a purpose in that, you know, the bracket was extended, I think, on purpose for the look. Is it, she thinks that it's deteriorating because it's exposed?
She does believe that the deterioration of the end of the brackets is because the connection of the cap and the sideboard of the bracket actually meet just beyond the edge of the roof.
That was sort of my first thought too, and looking at this, I feel like she's going to be redoing these corbels frequently, just from the weather. And
They've been here a long time, and I mean, I would guess that the reason that they're deteriorated is because they were neglected. So it just seems like if they've been there, I understand that's why they've deteriorated, but it was part of the original design. Anyway, that's my thought on that.
And Angela, what are we missing on the balcony floor structure? Is there anything in particular that the applicant wants to do that's different from what was previously there?
You have a photograph in the PowerPoint presentation, the handouts towards the back of your packet, that illustrates from Google Maps a photograph of the front of the house with the porch floor painted white. Almost directly in the center of that is a board. And what that board is for I am not familiar enough with porch components to tell you. But in the unpainted version, that piece has been relocated.
Okay.
That is the difference between the historic condition and the as-repaired condition.
So I guess my position on this is I think both the 1.5-inch overhang and the board are relatively minor. If the applicant's willing to put it back the way that it was, my vote would be to have her put it back exactly the way that it was. Okay. Do we have a motion?
All right, I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 21001A2 with the specific findings as noted in the staff report, and with a condition that the applicant work with staff to replace in kind the corbels and the floor structure.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Commissioner Ryman Phillip, seconded by Commissioner Poore. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Okay, that motion was passed unanimously. We will move on to item number 3, HPCA 2100184 at 2104 Northwest 29th Street.
This is in Shepherd, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Brooke and Michael Hines for certificate of appropriateness to 1 construct garage elective. The commission heard this application previously and continued it with a request for components of the application to be revised. Staff has not received any new information or revised documentation at this time and has recommended a second continuance. The commission can continue to July 6th or August 3rd, and perhaps due to not having heard from the applicant, a continuance to August 6th would allow them, right? We haven't heard from them since the last? Okay.
Is the applicant present
Do
today?
we have new on 182? I don't think we have anything new on this one. We're having a hard time staying in the right spot on the agenda today, apparently.
Or
We're on 184.
Yes, yeah, 184, sorry. This is the garage that's in Shepherd, that's on the corner, except there's a vacant lot next to it, so it's not actually on the corner, but it looks like it's a corner property. So to allow them time to potentially respond to the continuance, staff would suggest the August 3rd meeting date.
And it looks like that was not accurately documented previously and we've received no new information?
Correct.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Any citizens that wish to be heard? Do we have a motion for continuance?
I'll make a motion to continue HPCA 21-00184 to the August 3rd meeting.
Do we have a
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Poore, second by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. The motion was passed unanimously. We will move on to item number 4, HPCA 22-00037 at 530 Northwest 27th Street. Is the applicant present? There we go.
Yes, sir.
This is in Paseo, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Matthew Webb, Noel Outdoors, for Joe Coffin for certificate of appropriateness to 1, install pool and paving elective, and 2, replace driveway elective. Staff did recommend continuance on this. Proposed pool, everything appears to meet the regulations for installing the pool. There was concern about altering the built to open space ratio with the amount of new features and paving and structures introduced at the site. Staff's other concern is the paving at the driveway approach in the right-of-way that exceeds the typical width for a driveway, typical amount of paving that we would see in that location.
Okay. Talk to us about this particular project, specifically the unusual driveway, and is there any room for modification of that particular piece?
Well, outside of the section beyond the property line in the right-of-way, that would be up to the client, I'm not sure. In the interest of moving this project along, though, if we've met the guidelines specifically related to the pool, then we're fine with ditching the driveway for now, or date, and getting our CA for the swimming pool portion of it.
Okay.
So,
I'm comfortable with that direction after looking through everything in here. Any questions from commissioners? Joe, anything on your mind?
Well, I had a concern that the drawings turned in for the pool and that whole area. Are you saying that, I mean, all it is white? Is there any grass?
there is.
Where is it? Because it's not shown. I mean, are you going to put concrete all the way up to the house?
Off the back of the porch, yes.
Off the back, all the way to the side of, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is it's not, there's not a documentation of where the concrete will go. Usually when we have pools turned in, we have details on the paving and, you know, the decorative, you know, how it's going to look, or, you know, where plantings might be. I don't feel comfortable unless all of that is detailed. I mean, really, this is just a square on a piece of paper right now.
In the initial documentation of the application that was submitted, some of that information was included. Up until now, this is the first that I've heard of, you know, that requirement. Up to this point, the only thing that we had to ensure was that our paving achieved the, you know, the underneath the 70% threshold for the square footage of the property, which, and then of course the setbacks from the property lines, which of course through the last revision.
I guess I have a concern if in a year somebody comes in to see what we did, then how will they know what you proposed? That's my thought. Staff, do you have you see what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't really show where anything's going to be. And you also, staff had a comment on the drainage has been addressed. Is there something on the drawing that suggests that the drainage has been addressed?
I have I have the most recent one.
My memory might be a little bit fuzzy, but I remember looking at this one and that the main issue that we had at the time was paving the right-of-way, and that the pool was within, I think it was 10 feet or something of the property line. So it seems like you addressed those comments. I don't know if we had other documentation then that we don't
That's
have
grass,
now,
and then
that just wasn't in the packet or
along the-
something.
Of course, you know,
Just thinking back
this
to
point
the
is
last
as well as
meeting,
landscape, but
that's
within
what I
the property
remember.
line itself.
I mean,
You have
in the staff report under specific findings, it says
Side as
that the
well.
illustrations indicate that drainage is taken into consideration upon installation of the pool and paving.
They'll either,
I mean,
yeah, so we would
where
either
is
do,
that?
Yeah, I'm not seeing that documentation here either, and I'm wondering
we
if
say
we
it's a
missed a
problem.
second attachment.
I'm in agreement it's a problem if we don't have any grass, or if we have grass somewhere. I thought it,
See, I think there might have been some other documentation,
Drawing?
maybe. Or,
was there additional drawing? I'm sorry, I wasn't here last time.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through trying to find as well if there's something that we've left out here. Let me see.
On the one drawing, it says drain runoff emitting out street collection at deck, and that's all it says. It's a handwritten in blue
In blue.
on the Golden Land Survey, on the one previous with that's showing the proposed pool.
Drain runoff emitting out street collection at deck.
So I think the question is, does this meet the open space ratio still once
Right.
that portion is all concreted? Is that correct? Is that how you?
Yeah.
So it does say in the staff report, item 9, the proposed work appears to be consistent with regulations in the base zoning for lot coverage at less than 70%. I don't know if that helps our cause or not.
Yes, so, I mean, that includes, the front yard is
So,
obviously not covered, is
right.
open space.
So
So
I
that
guess,
gives you,
I guess my question would be, if staff thought that all of it was okay, then why do we have a continue instead of an approval? What was the question for commission? I mean, I guess that's how I read it because I wasn't here last time. So when it usually says continue, that means that staff is not sure of certain items, or you
So-
would have said approval.
we did recommend, we wanted the paving at the driveway to be continued. And while they meet the 70% lot coverage that is required, the commission also has the discretion to evaluate guidelines that talk about substantially altering the built to open space ratio with the amount of paving that's proposed. And I believe that was the primary concern with the pool. But they've met the setback requirements and the lot coverage requirements for the base zoning district.
Okay. I mean, I would just prefer to have more documentation, but,
I think that's fair. I mean,
I mean, to me, I thought, I mean, it's just, so you're saying that every single thing behind the back of the house is concrete, all the way around the house, around the pool?
Not all the way around the house.
And then the
Still down
driveway.
the east and the west sides of the house is still open green space. Within the property lines, even outside the property line, of course, it still is, all in the right of way is, which is irrelevant to this conversation.
So
but
there's 3 feet of grass on either side?
It'd be grass or landscape, whatever
Right.
he opts to do. but
Just
it won't
seems like a lot for a historic house to have all of that, but if it's allowed, then,
I agree with you. It does feel like a lot in the backyard, but at the same time, I do feel like it does still fit within the guidelines as,
I mean, we've asked people to do all sorts of things for sidewalks and stuff, and it just seems excessive. I'm done.
okay.
Okay, so it sounds like the pool itself meets the guidelines. You've moved it back to the 10-foot line. So really the only question was that the right-of-way, that paving, and you're okay with either continuing that, or should we just, you want to come back at a
We'll just
totally...
reapply for it. Yeah, we'll just reapply
Okay.
for the driveway.
So would that be a denial on the paving and an approval on the...
It sounds like we can just record that as withdrawn, and then they'll come back
Okay.
and reappay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Specific, just the driveway,
Right.
and then, of course, the portion in the right of way.
Yep.
I'll make a motion then if... anyone
Do we have
has
any citizens that
comments.
wish to be heard on this particular project? Any other questions from commissioners, comments? Okay, let's hear your motion.
All right, I'll make a motion for, to approve HPCA 22-00037. Items 1, install pool and paving, with the specific findings as noted in the staff report, and that it appears to meet all relevant guidelines. And do I need to mention that we're withdrawing item 2? Oh, he would just withdraw it.
Yep.
So then I'll just say continue on item 2, and you can withdraw it?
So he
or-
has verbally withdrawn it now,
Okay.
and we'll just record that, so you all don't need to take any
Don't have
action
to
on that.
address it at all. Okay, then that's my motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Commissioner Raymond Phillip, second by Commissioner Poore. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Okay, that motion was approved by a count of 4-1. We will move on to item number 5, HPCA 22-00048 at 809 Northwest 22nd Street.
Consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architecture for Sam Gresham for certificate of appropriateness to 2, install wood stairs and landing at upper level units of duplex buildings, elective. 3, install new deck and stair at lower level units of duplex buildings, elective. And 4, install 4-foot wood picket fence at front yard, elective. Staff has recommended approval of items 2 and 3 and recommended continuance of the front yard fence. The guidelines do not support the installation of fencing in the front yard when we don't have documentation that it was there historically. So without that documentation or other evidence of a unique circumstance supporting the fence, staff could not support approval of that, could not recommend approval of that item.
Perfect. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Holly Hunt, 400 Northwest 23rd Street. We're talking about one of Sam's properties, so he sent me today to talk to you all about this. We totally understand and expect the staff recommendation. We understand that this is a little gray area, if you will, on the guidelines. So that's why we're here to, what I want to focus on today, because I mean, obviously the staff's recommending approval on the deck and stairs. This is pretty basic. The ones that we're replacing were just falling apart and needed to be redone. So that's what that's about, but obviously well within the guidelines. So we appreciate an approval on those items. So in talking about the fence, a couple of things I want to point out. Mostly, this set of guidelines is really ideally set forth for residential properties. And this property is a multifamily, more similar to like an R3 zoning district, if you will. So a multifamily is so an apartment complex, if you will, kind of small. It's definitely an older building, but it was always designed to have this multifamily function and purpose. So, you know, where the guidelines are really clear about, you know, in residential, no front fences or anything like that. It doesn't really address commercial properties and the need for security for those types of properties. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up that Sam felt was important. Another thing I want to bring up, and it's probably best to understand if you're looking at the site plan. So if you've got that in front of you, 22nd Street has a really, really wide right-of-way. It's a 90-foot right-of-way along that street. So if you can see, our property line is set way, actually 45 feet from the center line of the street. And then, of course, the building is set back another 28 feet from the property line. So, you know, 75 feet from the front of the building to the middle of the street. So this proposed fence, just so you guys have an idea of the space, it's proposed to come out to our property line about 28 feet. Again, as a multifamily, the purpose of this space, obviously Sam's doing some improvements in the back and doing some additional parking. The back's yard is not really conducive to like a good front yard space or backyard space for activity and social gathering and stuff like that. It's loud. It abuts a very, very busy alleyway. That alleyway is also not your typical for the district. It's a 20-foot wide, brand new paved. It's a commercial street. It's utilized for deliveries and so forth. So it's a busy avenue back there. So it's not a very comfortable zone. Plus, a lot of the reason for proposing the fence is security. We've got many people using this kind of cut through as thoroughfare, and it's created a lot of security issues for the tenants. So again, the front yard space and fencing it will become more of the tenant's private space, an area to go walk their dog or throw a frisbee and things like that. So creating a sense of space or place there for the tenants that is, you know, more in the neighborhood, whereas the back is more the main street in a very, very commercial area. So again, the considerations for this lot, we hope the commissioners could see, are a little different than your typical residential lot and proposal. So we hope you'll take that into consideration. But again, that fence, just so you know, it doesn't extend all the way to the sidewalk. In fact, not even half that distance. So there's still plenty of space to give that nice broadness of the street with all the buildings at the same line. Again, this is just a 4-foot fence. It's, I would say like 50% transparent, as the slats will be spaced to let that transparency there. But again, the main goals here are to, we hope that you can review this as the commercial property that it is, and we'd love to hear some feedback. I mean, if we have to continue this and bring back some more supporting evidence, I mean, there are examples of these types of fences in the district, obviously not at this site, and I understand what the guidelines say. But I did just want to point out one piece real quick, and then I'll give it to you all. But 2.8.15 in the guidelines that talk about fences, it says, where residential properties are adjacent to commercial or other incompatible uses, alternate fence heights may be considered for appropriateness with respect to other city ordinances and fences and fence walls. So again, I mean, even the guidelines tend to know that this adjacency or this abutting of residential to commercial may create some kind of unique circumstances. So I think that's just what they were getting at there. But anyway, thoughts on the fence?
We've had similar proposals from Paseo for buildings like this, and for reasons similar, not to have people cross their property. It was on the corner of like Walker and a couple of blocks, about halfway through Paseo. So we denied having those fences in the front yard in the past.
I struggle with, excuse me, I struggle with the fence in the front yard too. I mean, guidelines seem pretty clear to me. Fences are not permitted in the front yard. With respect to people passing through, there's some question as to whether landscaping features or landscaping elements could stop people from coming through in a similar fashion as would a fence. So that might be an alternative, but I don't think I could support a fence in the front yard at this particular project either.
Okay.
Any other comments? Any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Do we have a motion?
So we might want to ask the applicant if they'd like a continuance to work on revisions to the proposed project.
I think a continuance on the fence, just to give Sam an opportunity to understand the thoughts of the commission and get that feedback back to him and decide if he'd rather withdraw that or bring a revised proposal.
So
That sounds good. I think the other items, at least for me personally, seem pretty
Yeah.
Straightforward.
cut and dry.
If we could get the other ones approved today, just so he can get, because right now, like, those people can't even use their back door. So, yeah, if we can get those approved and then continue the fence, at least maybe one more revision, and then we can decide what he wants to do.
So the fence can be continued to July 6th or August 3rd. It's going to be a really tight turnaround with the holiday in the middle there with July 6th and everything. So I don't know if you want more time for him to think about
Let's
that.
do the July meeting, please.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 22-00048 items, let me see here, 2 and 3, with specific findings as noted in the staff report, and to continue item 4 to the July 6th HP meeting.
So I think we have to do the approval and the continuance as two separate motions.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Okay.
that first one can just
we'll
be
do
the.
approve
yeah.
items 2 and 3 first.
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Commissioner Raymond Phillips, second by Commissioner Poore. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
All right, I'll make a motion to, or I guess I'll wait for the result.
There it goes.
Okay, that motion was passed unanimously.
All right, and I'll make a motion to continue HPCA 22-00048 items 4 to the July 6th HP meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Commissioner Raymond Phillips, second by Commissioner Poore. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
We're going to have to do a verbal vote because it won't give
Okay.
me an option. Commissioner Fudge,
Yay.
Commissioner Ryman Phillip,
Aye.
Commissioner Meacham,
Aye.
Commissioner Milner,
Aye.
Commissioner Poore.
Aye.
Okay. The continuance was unanimously approved. We will move on to item number 6, HPCA 22-00066 at 509 Northwest 15th. Is the applicant present?
This is located in Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Robert Haggard for Aaron Horton for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage elective, 2, construct new garage elective, 3, replace the existing composition roof of house with metal elective, 4, replace rear dormer with dormer, balcony, and doors elective, 5, construct rear porch elective, and 6, replace windows with doors on rear of dwelling elective. Staff did recommend approval with conditions for all items except for the construction of the new garage. The proposed garage exceeds the size threshold established by the guidelines, and there are some other issues with materials as addressed in the guidelines. And you do have written comment from the neighborhood association as well as from some adjacent neighbors regarding this project.
Katie, is staff comfortable with the metal roof on this particular project?
So I
too?
believe there's a condition that the roof material needs to meet guidelines for new roofing materials. Yeah,
So
guidelines don't support metal where metal was not previously historically present.
Okay. All right, looks like our computers, at least mine and Commissioner Ryman Phillip over here, is not wanting to work for us. But talk to us about this project. There's several things that staff has recommended approval on. Cedar roof, or the metal roof, I think needs to be changed. Also, looks like the garage may be too big and lacking some documentation of or materials that need additional clarification as well.
Of the interior?
Say that again?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Staff has recommended approval on everything but looks like the garage.
Okay.
The garage was noted as too large and materials that needed additional clarification and documentation. So if you could address the commission with respect to some of those
Okay.
particular items.
Okay. Robert Haggard, 509 Northwest 15th. So we're not going to address 3 through 6, right?
Will?
I have questions.
Yes. I would
For after-
imagine we will address those.
For after the garage.
Go ahead.
For after the garage.
Say that again?
For after the garage. If you want to address the garage first.
Oh,
Mine are other.
go for it, Commissioner Meacham.
Okay. Well, I'm in agreement with staff on the shingles, but on the rear porch, I'm looking at the drawings, and I'm not so against the actual, wherever, the position of the porch, but the materials that are being used. With the idea of the metal porch, I feel like that in the historic districts, we're trying to preserve the original architectural integrity of each home, and I feel like that some of the ideas here are maybe in conflict with the original Tudor characteristics. Particularly the metal roof would be one, but kind of combined, I know that they're saying no on that, but combined with the really heavy use of the cedar rails and the crosses, I feel like, I'm not against the porch, but the detailing I feel like is inappropriate for this style of house.
Okay. Let me just say one thing, just as a point of order. Are we going at all by this docket? Because item 3 is incorrect. It's a typographical error, just in case it passed on through. We don't want to replace the existing roof with a metal roof.
What are you planning to replace the roof with?
Sir?
What are you planning to replace the roof with?
Shake shingles.
Okay.
That was all in our original proposal, but on this part here, in case it passes through, it's a typographical error, I suppose.
So in the staff report, it does have the material correct in the staff report, and I'm sorry that we didn't catch that error. The shake shingles are also a material that's not supported by the guidelines. The guidelines support cedar shingles of a different type, but not the thick, rough-hewn shake shingles. So either I'm going blank on what the actual shingles are called that the guidelines support, but the other style of shingles that's a smooth finish or an architectural grade composition roof would be supported by the guidelines. And so those would be alternatives both for a metal roof, if that was what you had intended, or for the shake shingles.
Okay, so, do we want to? Okay, so the owner is good with withdrawing shake shingles and going to smooth cedar shingles,
Okay,
if that's permissible to do.
okay.
Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what to address with this garage other than what I know, and hopefully that will be sufficient. So I sent in around 15 color pictures of the interior of the garage before the deadline, I thought, that show dry rot, all kinds of water damage. So the point is, when they built this garage in the first place, they built it 8 inches below grade. So whenever it rains, it's a swimming pool. It has been doing this since 46. And so when you go in there and look at it, all of the studs are rotting out with termite damage along the sill plate. In 1946, they didn't have borate or treated lumber, so none of the sill plates are treated, so they're all rotting out. There's not, the top plate is supposed to be by code. I know about code and historical preservation, but at any rate, there's only one 2x4 top plate. The rafters are 2x4s. There are ceiling joists at 6 feet on center, but they're 2x4s, and that's it in that whole garage. Every 6 feet, there's a 2x4. The 2x4s are scabbed together in the middle. There are no roof braces, so you could not build this today. And I realize there's a kind of a feeling with historical preservation, well, that's the way they built it, so to preserve it historically, you'd have to leave this structure, which is really an unwanted structure. We didn't get it in time, but we have an engineer's report that backs up what I just said. He made his visual, and he's...
Yeah,
so
the demolition was approved.
The staff report recommends approval of the
Was recommending
demolition.
approval.
I don't think that if we're approved the demolition, how can you not approve the building it back?
Well,
Talk about it. I think the questions are just in the design of the new building. They're not.
It's exactly, we're gonna take the brick off of the existing.
It's larger, I think.
We're gonna use the existing brick to the point that it can be used. They don't make screened brick anymore, where they run a screen through
Is the footprint of the new garage larger than the existing garage?
by 3.5 feet longer. 3.5 feet longer.
So in the staff report, it does note that the garage exceeds the size of the existing garage, and it exceeds 5% of the site, which is 490 square feet. It appears that it's too big. And what we've seen as of late is everybody comes in with a garage that's just slightly overbuilt, and we're starting to get these massive garages in historic preservation neighborhoods.
Let me say this. The allowed square footage is 680 square feet. Because you either use 450 or 5% of the total square footage of the property. Is that what you said? So the total square footage allowed is 680 square feet. If you look at this document here, is that what you were referring to?
I was referring to the notes in the staff report.
Did you say 450?
So 490, the proposed garage exceeds 5% of the site, which is 490 square feet. The proposed garage exceeds the size of the existing historic garage, which is 560 square feet.
But it's 5% of the lot, whichever is greater. So 5% of the lot is greater than the 450.
I think there's the dimensions of the lot size are, there's a discrepancy. Just
No,
let staff work it out. Just
There's 13,000.
Right. Where is your information from? Is it from the?
This?
Yeah.
From her?
Hand that to Angela. Are we using the same numbers?
That paragraph there, 450 square feet or 5% of the total lot, whichever is greater.
Sir, I think
So
that
I
we
think-
just need to know where each group is getting their size of the lot, if it's the same number.
I need to prove it?
No, well, we just need to know which group used which number.
So it looks like the existing garage is 560 anyways. And,
Which is over,
correct, which, you know I
Sir,
wouldn't.
can you
and
please
I
go back to the
assume
mic? I'm
other-
sorry, so we get you on record. Thank you.
And I assume other commissioners wouldn't have an issue with it matching that 560, which
No.
is above that 490. You know, just matching that existing garage. I guess it's a question of if you're going to go bigger than that 560, you know, is that, you know, what is that 5% then? You know, in the staff report, which is kind of information that we're going off, it says 490.
Okay.
So, you know, in which case, you know, it would be smaller than that. But since the existing garage is 560, you know, I don't have an issue, you know, building it back to 560, unless for some reason he had, you know, like a survey of the site or something, and you could show exactly what the square footage of the site is. And
but if your standards and guidelines say that we can go with 5% of the total lot, which would be 680 square feet, why isn't that permissible? Because we're 3.5 feet more than 680? Because if so, we would back down to 680 for approval.
So I think we have either a discrepancy between what the applicant has and what staff has, or a miscalculation of the lot size. I'm looking at the site plan that is in the attachments, and that does indicate that the lot is 170 by 80, which would get you 13,600 square feet, and 5% would be 680. So I think the statement that the lot size, or that the maximum, the 5% of the site is not 490, it's actually 680. The proposed garage is still above the 680, but is much closer to 680 than it is to 490.
That's 3.5 feet wider than the allowed square footage, but we'll take off 3.5 feet and go back to,
Can you go back to the microphone, please?
sir?
Can you speak at the microphone, please?
Katie,
Can you speak at the microphone?
it says
So, in other words-
560 in the report.
We would,
560 is the existing garage.
we would go back
The proposed, okay,
to
then
the
I guess it doesn't
680
have the number.
if you think
Oh,
that,
okay, I see what you're
that
saying.
that would, then that would be in accordance with the guidelines of the Historic Preservation Committee.
Yes, I believe if it was 680 square feet, that would meet the threshold for the garage size. The other concern was the shingles, which you've already addressed on the house, so presumably you'd be okay using the cedar shingles on the garage as well, which would then match the house. I
Smooth.
think those were the two primary concerns with the proposed garage.
So have we met those requirements if we drop down to 680 square feet, take 3.5 feet off of it? And we're using the same brick.
Sounds like it would, because it's rebuilding back in kind, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't have an issue.
Okay,
I don't have an issue with that either.
I second it.
So we do have written comments from the neighborhood and from neighbors, so we need to see.
Sure.
Right. The other was the garage, so there were some other findings. One was that the garage door should be painted.
I'm sorry,
Are you
what?
in a, there was also findings that they should be painted. Are you intending on painting the garage doors?
They were going to be cedar, but if they would like them to be painted, I'm happy to paint them.
Did you, yeah, so we,
It just doesn't matter.
we submitted cedar, but she will paint them if cedar isn't appropriate.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
And then Commission Member Meacham had started to discuss the detailing of the porch. We didn't really
I mean,
talk through that. Were
right.
there any other, I wanted to just make sure we didn't skip over
Right.
that.
If everybody could, this is the elevation, yeah. My concern is not really the configuration or something on the back of the house. I just think that the current design of the railings are
Railing?
a little inappropriate for the Tudor house, that they're more of a kind of country leaning, well, I don't really know, I don't know if I could put a style to it, but I think it's going to, I want to say, it's just too heavy for the style of the house. Generally Tudor houses, and when it comes to fence or attached railings, a lot of times they're, I'm not saying do this, I'm just saying a lot of times they're metal, kind of a decorative, more of a lighter look. And so I think these are just, in my opinion, they're not as fitting for this particular style as perhaps a simpler railing.
Not necessarily as compatible for the neighborhood, maybe.
Right.
May I ask?
That's all. I don't, as far as,
I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just trying whatever I'm trying, and that is this. So if we have these documents from historical preservation, and it says anything that cannot be seen in that triangle is permissible. So how is it that if anything is permissible within that triangle,
it still comes.
this is not permissible?
If everything was permissible, we wouldn't have you send in drawings on the back of the house. I mean, they're all with,
Okay.
we're allowed to comment
So
on
anything-
those items,
Okay,
no matter
so-
what.
Is that the only contention? Is that fence? I mean, the handrail?
It's the railing, the crossboard, that's my comments. I'm only one person.
Yeah, but I tend to agree with you, Commissioner Meacham. I think the style of the house is a little aggressive.
I mean, I guess I would just add, if I was going to make a motion, I would just put a condition that you submit a different railing style to staff for approval. So not trying to hold you up or anything, but that I think is just a little heavy-handed for the style of the house. That's my comment. So,
Can we remove the X's and just have the straight wood members?
I think that would help simplify it. I mean, I both agree with Commissioner Meacham. I don't know that it necessarily fits the style of the house, but I also, it's the back porch and it's not visible, so I'm not sure personally if it's, but if you're open, if that's something that was important to some other commissioners, and if you're open to modifying the railing, I think that could be an easy, we could approve it and you could just take a slightly modified railing to staff,
We'll just take the X's off.
Yeah. I think that would help simplify it, but I do understand what Commissioner Meacham is saying. A lot of the Tudor houses, they do have, a little bit lighter railings, whether it's metal or just, like the 2x2 vertical.
and when we do make additions, which it is kind of an addition to the house, we say that we want it to be secondary to the, be compatible, but yet, be a little simpler design than the original.
Sure.
So it doesn't detract, that's all.
Sure.
So,
We're happy to remove those X's.
so.
Okay.
Saves a little money.
Yeah. Is there anybody from the neighborhood that wishes to speak on this particular project? Yes, sir. Can you come to the podium?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff, my name is Gary Derrick. I live across the street. I'm here to speak on behalf of myself, my wife Fran, our neighbors, the Boxes, the Whipples. I have to say we're happy to see this investment. This house has been vacant for going on 10 years. It's frankly been neglected. There have been break-ins. It's been a problem. And so I hope that this investment means that the house will be occupied from this point on. And if that's the case, then that may solve many of our concerns. I can say that we support the staff's recommendations. There were quite a few. There's actually not just the shake shingles. There's a standing seam material that was on the back of the porch. There are questions about the materials for the garage doors and the windows. And now we have some design issues that I think need to be addressed. We have one exception, and we are concerned about the demolition of the garage. Demolition is an irreversible act. Once it's done, it can't be undone. And we're concerned about someone might get into this project and then lose interest in it, and the replacement garage never be finished. So that's very much a concern of ours. We ask for a continuance. Our hope is that we can meet with the applicant, work through some of these concerns, and I would hope that that would be possible. And I ask for the commission's indulgence on that point. I'd also like to see, because of the extent of the changes between the staff report and perhaps retention of the existing garage, that new renderings be submitted so we can be assured that everybody is on the same page in terms of what ought to be done. Thank you very much.
I just would like to say, I can understand some of your concerns because I'm familiar with that particular area of the district. And there are some original, and not just some, but there are many historic garages right in that area that remain standing and that are of the style we would call the high style, matching the house and having elements such as that. So anyway, with the comments from the neighbors, I mean, I would be in favor of that if we're going to have more drawings. And also, even though staff has stated the type of shingle that we're asking for, we haven't given the owner the opportunity to go look for that shingle, to price that shingle, and to really agree that that would be the shingle, and to give that shingle to brand and size to staff to be approved. So I would be in support of continuing so that we can get more of the details on paper before we go forward.
I mean, I can certainly support that direction too, to make sure that the neighbors are working together on this as well. I think that's all important.
But if we're going to build back the garage with the same brick, same roof pitch, different, I mean, instead of that old composition roof, we're going to put smooth shakes that were available in 1934. What else would you ask someone for input? What would you say?
No, I personally think that is, if you're going to build it just like it was, I would imagine that will get approved. I think what we're requesting today is, because it does sound like there's several different modifications that need to be made, shingles, garage door finishes, size of the garage, all of that. Shingles, garage door finishes, size of the garage, that we would request new documentation.
Up to the 650 feet.
Sure.
The same bricks. It's going to have 2 overhead doors.
It sounds like there's lots of requests from the commissioners on modifications to this particular project. In terms of the design, in terms of the materials.
The design is the same as it is. It's just using the 650 square foot rule. Same brick, same windows, same overhead doors.
I'm focusing mainly on the railing and things of that nature at this point too.
To what?
The railing and the things of that nature at this point as well. The design of the railing. It sounds like there's been a lot of requests for modifications of the design of the project and also the materials that are being used as well.
Okay, so if we take the X's off and reduce it to the 650 square feet, then we're in conformance? We've agreed to do that.
Well, yeah, just speaking for myself here, I always appreciate neighbors' comments, and I think, they all live in the same neighborhood, and, I want everyone to get along after this process, so that's important as well. To me, on this project, I feel like, with staff recommending approval for most of the items and some of the changes that you've agreed to, I think for me, I feel comfortable approving it today based on the merits of the proposal, the changes that you're proposing, kind of the adherence to the guidelines. If there was more modifications to the front of the house, maybe something that would be more of an impact to the neighborhood, then, I think I would take that maybe into a little bit more consideration and say, okay, if you're going to redo the porch, you're going to do, a bunch of stuff, replace a bunch of windows, then absolutely, I feel like, yeah, let's take another month and look at this. But since, and as far as the garage is concerned, I understand the concern with the garage, but we've seen a lot of garages and the sill plates underneath the ground and they're rotted, and there's really no viable way, as much as we would like to. I mean, you're going to replace 90% of the garage, and it's going to cost twice as much to try to rebuild it than just to replicate it. And the fact that you're reusing the brick, and doing what you can to replicate the garage as close as possible, I think, I appreciate that as well. So I guess just speaking for myself, I don't really see a compelling reason to continue it, when I feel like I think, adhering to the guidelines, you've agreed to some minor, it's really pretty minor changes that we're requesting. So I guess for me personally, I'm okay approving it with the conditions we've discussed, but.
So are you saying that you're okay with approving it?
I am personally, yeah.
Yeah, I know. So, second it. No,
What's your-
seriously, can you
what's
look
your
at
stance on
page
the
sheet 11?
railing?
I would like to say one thing, it may be incorrect, but as a point of contention, to contend building this garage, tearing down a structure that structural engineers have said it has termite damage, you cannot lift the garage, raise the footing is not correct. There's a tree growing in the back of it, I guess you saw the pictures, that is tearing down the back wall. How in the world you would ever rebuild the garage as it is in 70 years, well, let's say 50 years I've been in this business. I'm telling you professionally it cannot be done.
No, I agree. That's why I'm not,
But his contention, with all due respect, that he wants to make sure we're going to finish the project and not lose interest, I hope that isn't a consideration.
Yeah. No, to answer Commissioner Porter's question, as far as the railing, if you're open to submitting
house
some
across the street
modifications
is
to the
painted
railing, then
white.
I would say, submit the modifications to the railing.
But if you look at page 11,
Do we have other citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Ma'am?
here,
Is this mic on? Okay. I am Shannon Rundle from Heritage Hills, and Randy Ice, our trustee leader of our committee, is out of town, so I'm here today. But our committee did meet, and we felt like that the guidance of Angela, actually, those reports that she did were quite good. And I think that Angela had minor changes, but I don't think it got into anything as dramatic as what we're talking about now. And I had to step out, so I did not hear what Gary Derrick said that across the street neighbors are saying, but indeed, across the street neighbors have painted a stone house white, and you all approved an oversized garage that was moved a few years ago. So I think it's just, we like to get along in our neighborhood, and I think that probably people can work with Erin. I'm glad Erin is coming back to the neighborhood. She lived up the street from me as a child, and her parents lived in several houses, so she's not, an unknown person in the neighborhood, and renovated a house on 20th Street that is just gorgeous. We're hoping to have it on the home tour this year. But anyway, I think that, this should be able to be worked out, I think, don't you? And, yeah, I think Erin's willing to work with the commission, and that's all
I appreciate, yeah, go ahead.
But before we go there.
No, I'm
Ma'am?
really through. I just wanted to say that our.
Can you come to this podium and sign in? And sir, in the back, can you also do the same thing?
I did sign in.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Sir, if you wouldn't mind You did as well. Okay.
Surely I don't have to repeat all that.
All right, if you haven't already, would you sign in on our sign-in sheet on that podium? If you haven't already, can you sign in at the podium? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay.
Perfect. There we go. Okay, so it sounds like we were close to a motion. Do we have a motion on this particular project?
I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 22-00066. We need a separate one for the demolition, correct? So I'll make a motion to demolish garage item 1, to approve item 1 with the specific findings as noted in the staff report.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Ryman Phillips, seconded by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Okay, that demolition was approved unanimously.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 22-00066, items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, with the specific findings as noted in the staff report and the conditions, and I need to look back at the conditions and make sure that they cover. So one condition that the applicant comes back with a simplified railing design for staff to approve. Is the roof covered in the conditions?
Yes, the roof is already in the conditions in the staff report.
Okay.
Roof, house and,
Yes, the house, porch, garage,
okay.
Yeah, so
all address
so
the
all
roof
roof
material.
needs to match the guidelines. Were those the only 2 items? I think they were, right?
Shingles?
Shingles, yeah.
Yeah, shingles.
And then that the garage will be reduced to no more than 680 square
Right.
feet.
And that the garage will be a maximum 680 square feet, and that a revised, I guess,
Garage
maybe like a
doors
floor
to be
plan
painted.
or
What?
plan. And that a revised plan will be submitted to staff
Okay.
to confirm that. Sorry, what were you saying?
Garage doors to be painted.
Okay, and a condition for the garage doors to be painted.
Okay, do we have a second on that one?
All right. I don't have
I'll
the thing
second.
up.
Moved by Commissioner Ryman Phillip, seconded by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
My Prime Gov is not working.
Mine doesn't appear to be working yet.
Okay, good.
We will have to do a verbal vote for that
Yep.
also. Commissioner Fudge,
Yay.
Commissioner Ryman Phillip,
Aye.
Commissioner Meacham,
Aye.
Commissioner Milner,
Aye.
Commissioner Poor.
Aye.
Okay, that motion was passed unanimously. Thank you, guys. All right, we'll move on to item number 7, HPCA 22-00068 at 626 Northwest 28th Street.
This is located in Paseo, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Tammy Nyhart, TRN Enterprises LLC for Andrew Black, Dre Barracks LLC for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace non-historic windows, elective. This is an application to replace, I believe, 7 windows in the structure that are clearly non-historic based on the photographic documentation that the applicant has provided. Staff did recommend a continuance, though, because the submitted replacement window documentation doesn't appear to depict windows that meet the guidelines for replacement windows. So we just need the applicant to provide documentation of windows that meet the relevant guidelines.
Perfect. Is the applicant present?
I did reach out to the applicant prior to the meeting. I haven't heard back from them, so we may want to continue to the August 3rd date to allow them time to respond.
Okay. Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this project? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to continue HPCA 22-00068 to the August 3rd meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham, second by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, are we voting verbally or in prime gov? Excellent. Okay, the continuance was passed unanimously. We'll move on to item number 8, HPCA 22-00069 at 2109 North Broadway Avenue.
This is located in Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Brad Trice Construction for Oksana Dijuk, QWAK, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct an addition elective, 2, construct garage elective, and 3, install driveway elective. Staff did recommend approval of these items. The one item of note with the proposed work for staff is that this is a smaller lot than what is typical in the neighborhood. And while the garage and the addition meet applicable guidelines, construction of those will then exceed the 50% kind of threshold for lot coverage. This is in an area that is zoned HP, so that is just a guideline, and it is a guideline. It's a reference point that we look to in R1 base zoning. It's not a regulation. They wouldn't need a variance to exceed that threshold, but that's something that the commission has referenced in looking at adding built structures and built space to properties. We did feel like the size of the lot was potentially a unique circumstance in reference to the proposed garage and addition.
So everything else, though, you guys were comfortable with in terms of design, build?
Everything else design-wise, materials, et cetera, all met, appear to meet relevant guidelines. And then I'll just note that you do have written comments from a neighbor and from the neighborhood association on this one as well.
I have a question for staff in regards to that. Under unique circumstances, you say that the site is small at 5,800 square feet, but adequate to provide a garage and an addition. So I guess I'm wondering, what is our definition of adequate if we're making an exception? I mean, is it 10% over, or it's just the look of the project, or, I mean, it seems like that's not a definitive answer, adequate.
No, it's not. It's not a mathematical calculation.
I would like to see.
We felt that the spacing between the structures, the spacing on the site was still appropriate. The site did have a garage historically, so they were able to fit an accessory structure on there in the past.
I just say that because we're looking at small lots and putting so much on them. It seems like the more we do, the more we're open to putting more. I mean, I would just like to see, if the site is small, how much the ratio is increased from 30% to 67%. So what is our percentage that we're over, or what? That just is not a very good fit. I mean, for me, adequate is not an explanation for a unique circumstance.
That's fair. Is it 51, is it 60, or is it 90%?
I mean, it's not, unique circumstances to me needs to be a legal reason, because we're presenting an exception to the guideline, and so I don't think adequate is, for me, it's not sufficient, so.
Although I think Katie made an interesting point that because it's HP zoned, it's not an underlying, it's not like we're modifying the base zoning code per se. It's a guideline. We
make exception, I mean, we're saying we're going to give you an exception because it's adequate.
Sure, I think it'd be nice to know, if it is like borderline or something, or if it's close and it is a unique, site or a unique lot, maybe that is, unique circumstance, but what is that number?
The next person can come back and say, well, I think mine's adequate.
Yeah, well, and I will say that even the 50% is not even in the guidelines anywhere. All that the guideline says is not to substantially reduce the built to open space ratio. So I think to some extent, they're adding a garage where historically there was a garage. So that's, in my opinion, not
I'm just saying, if I was on the stand and I had to say, well, my circumstance was it was adequate, I feel like that would not be a very good defense for me. So that's all.
Understood.
And I don't understand why, because it's not adequate. I mean, I don't understand why. I understand your explanation, but
it kind of sounds like there's a lot of gray area all around here, because you're saying the 50% is not that's not a hard.
That's for other people. I mean, that's for regular residential.
50% is the requirement if you're R1.
Gotcha.
So in HP, we tend to reference R1 bulk standards as sort of establishing a threshold for a residential. but
it
it's
doesn't
not a
say in the
regulation.
I mean, my
guidelines,
thought, and I
50%,
knew that when I looked at that, and I thought, well, my preference would be to stand to the 50 or less. Why would a historic district want to be more crowded than recommended for the general public? Because we have historic land and neighborhoods and yards and stuff that we're trying to protect, yet we go over the recommended.
Well, I would argue on that note, not to get into weeds on this,
What?
but, you know, there's so many unique built-out scenarios in HP neighborhoods. I mean, you might have a eightplex that, you know, and parking back that covers almost 100%
Right.
the lot, and you might
Well, when they're
have,
unusual and they're
so-
there. But
yeah.
that's like, you know, so you're not in a historic district and you're like, well, I want to put a, you know, why can't I put a bigger garage? Why can't I put a bigger, you know, RV cover in my backyard?
Yeah.
Anyway, my thought on this one, it seems like it's, you know, big for the lot.
Yeah. Well, I hear your argument for sure. I guess I was thinking that 50% was more of a, you know, more, something outlined in the guidelines.
You know-
It sounds like that's just something that is kind of loosely referenced in R1, so I guess.
You know, and when you look at it, I mean, does it look, if you were living in a historic district and you looked at that addition in the side of that house, and then you look at the front, I mean, we no longer really have a cottage house. We have this long, I understand that the design followed the deal, but just the whole thing added up together, just, to me, it does not enhance the surroundings. It's detrimental, but even though supposedly it follows the guidelines, but not really because we don't have a coverage number, but it's adequate, so I'm done.
Although it does seem like that would be pretty, it wouldn't be very visible from the street, if I'm correct on this. Yeah.
We're the only house that sits there on Broadway, standing on Broadway there. And the problem we have is, you know, that noise and everything coming towards us, with all the cars driving by, since they've enlarged that so much and it's so much commercial traffic in there. And that's why
Introduce yourself and
Oh,
sign in
I'm
for us
Brad
for the
Trice
record.
with
Sorry.
Trice Construction, sorry.
We did not have a Sanborn map on this or a map showing other, I didn't. Is there one? Okay.
I mean, there is going to be a
Oh, okay. Where's,
you know, a
which
pretty
one
good
is it?
chunk of open space still behind the addition and behind the garage, it seems like.
Yeah, and also on the side, on the
Yeah.
north or south side of it.
Oh, there. Okay, thank you.
I guess I guess personally I'm okay with kind of staff assessment of this, I would say.
I think that's where I get as well. I think the addition is, it's a small lot, but the addition is pretty reasonable. The garage is reasonable. There is still some grass back there, which is nice. It's not completely paved over. I don't know if a small lot is necessarily a unique circumstance, but isn't there something to the configuration of how these houses sit on the lot too? Maybe with the one that's close to it that had some bearing on this as well? Is there anything to that nature?
So you do have written comments from the neighbor that address, among other things, setbacks and whether a structure would be actually over the property line.
Yeah, I'm on the county assessor site right now, and I mean, with that addition and with that garage, there's really not that much open space anymore. And then, I mean, it's a 35-foot wide addition, is that how, am I reading that right?
35 long, 18
35
wide.
long, yeah, so I mean, it's really not,
24.
it's hard because we don't have I don't think we have an actual site plan that shows the property boundaries and a survey.
Right.
Or there is one, kind of, there is one. But yeah, that's, I mean,
There
that's
should be
not
a
a lot
site
of
plan in there.
open space.
And it backs up, the only thing on the back side of it, you've got backyards on either side is what you've got. You don't, there's no other houses that are close. It's the backyards to those houses that are there.
I think that sometimes that open space requirement can be deceiving as well, because once you add in like the side yard, the front yard, you know, some of the area in back. Some of it's surprising how close to 50% you get, you know, if you actually quantify it that way. I don't know if that's the case here. I just.
No way.
Initially, this was around 30% coverage, and we've expanded to 67% coverage. The site is quite small. You do have a site plan, Commissioner Poore,
I do,
and
yeah, I
you
see it.
also have the Sanborn maps, and I'm happy to share this with you if it would be easier.
Got it. I found it.
I can see it.
Is the neighbor here?
Yes, do we have anybody from the neighborhood that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, we have the neighbors back there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Either one, we're good with either one.
Okay. I did actually walk around this property today. I told the owner I didn't really walk on his property, but I did walk around. I started on the street below and came in from the street ahead because this is the only house that faces Winans Park. And so this backyard backs over houses on the street south and houses on the street north. It's a very unusual location, I think, and that is what we're trying to, you know, talk about. Our committee asked that he continue it so he could meet with the committee, and maybe some of you, I don't know that you all legally can meet with him, but our committee can meet and try to reach an agreement that's good, you know, for everybody. And but the house definitely needs renovation. It's in not good condition. And I think on the unique situation, you know, I believe that the house was purchased with the same size lot that it has. It's not like, you know, something, we've gone down this road before here, you know, didn't you know? And so I think that it would be kind of against what you all have done in the past to, you know, go with this. But anyway, and I don't know what he's decided to do, but the neighbors are here. And this is one neighbor, and other neighbors are there, and then I'm just from the committee. But
Thank you. And can you state your name and address for the record again, too, please? Can you state your name and address for the record
Shannon
again, too,
Rundle,
please?
431 Northwest 20th.
Thank you.
You all are going to bar me, aren't you? Sorry.
Ma'am, would you like to speak?
Yes. I'm Laura Vaughn. I live at 100 Northwest 21st. So if you're on 21st, their property is directly behind mine. I have several concerns, but just to kind of build on that, I think that the property would be vastly overbuilt. It's about the same square footage of what part of the property that would be covered, but my lot is 0.2 acres rather than the 0.13, and I just can't see how this would all fit, which kind of brings me to my other point that it seems to not really fit. I've submitted a packet here. I have handouts for everybody. I don't know if you have these.
We cannot take those today.
Oh, I
think we've got the same
emailed them
thing.
in.
Yep,
Yes.
we've
okay,
got them
great.
here.
Yeah. So if I could just kind of run through that really quick, I'm sure it doesn't make much sense without context. But so the plan they have submitted says that the garage would be, quote, almost on the north property line. And it shows the driveway currently as being within their property line by a good portion. And then if you go to page 3 here, you'll see one survey. This is my mortgage inspection report from when I purchased the property, showing that I have about 5 or 6 feet past my garage that is on my property. And then the next survey, which was done by the person who owned my home previously, a PIN survey, which just kind of sets up for the pictures you see on page 5. There's actually an X on their driveway marking the property line. And so their driveway is already somewhat built over the property line. So any further encroachment would really concern me, and especially my neighbors behind me. It looks like the garage is planned to come out about another foot, and that would be fully in their backyard. So until that was addressed and there were some changes made, because the plan the property lines shown are not accurate, and we would want to make sure that we weren't having, either of our pieces of land built on. I don't know how, how much you can consider this, but we have also had just a lot of issues in the past with our access to our home being blocked by the owners and by the contractors. And as you can see, it's referred to as a shared driveway, but there really are it's more like two driveways next to each other. And I've spoken with the owner, and she's claimed the property line to be farther over than it, in fact, is shown with that marking, and has also claimed to have an easement and be able to use my property and park on my property. So I do have a lot of concerns that they're not really respecting the property boundaries, and that this could go down a bad road if we don't have a very clear plan for how this would be done.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Any questions for our speakers today?
I mean, with this in mind, I would think that we would need the owner and property owners surrounding them to get together and survey their properties and bring that information back to the commission.
I agree with the survey.
Yeah.
From what we could tell, we're directly, from what we can tell, we're where we need to be. But, since the question was brought up, we would do that before we ever started the actual construction of it.
I think that's the appropriate way to go about this.
I would recommend all of you get together and talk about it. Sounds like maybe there's more concerns, but based on that, I would probably make a motion to continue just so that we can have time for the survey and perhaps for the neighbors and the owner to get together and discuss maybe.
I'm supportive of that as well. Do you want to make the motion?
I would make a motion to continue HPCA 22-00069 to the, I don't think you would have time to
We can
make.
sure try.
You would
Like
only
the
have
sixth
till
meeting?
Tuesday.
Huh?
You would only have till
this coming
Tuesday of
Tuesday?
next week, and that would be difficult. I would say,
Can I give it a shot to get, because I'll get a surveyor out there to get it
because
surveyed.
not only you would have to get a survey, but you'd have to have meetings.
Oh, okay.
What do you think?
I think it probably needs to be extended beyond.
I would say August, to the August meeting.
This is the first
Could we
continuance.
not make
August 3rd.
Yeah, this is the first time that it's been heard, so they would have this continuance and then one additional continuance, but you only get 2 continuances, so you don't want to waste one and not have time to accomplish the purpose of why it was continued in the first place. And I was also going to just ask the commission if there are any additional comments on the addition itself, the lot coverage, if while this is continued, they should be considering alternatives to the design that's submitted.
I would prefer that they meet with the neighbors first, would be my comment.
Okay.
Are y'all neighbors?
Hi, Alicia Sullivan, 104 Northwest 21st Street. The property we're concerned with is a survey that was done in 2014 shows that part of these people's driveway is actually in my property. And so we're just, concerned about the property lines and what's permanently going to be on those property lines.
Sure.
I'm also concerned about, I have a very well-built shed in our backyard, and it butts up right into that backyard. And I'm wondering how close is this garage going to be to that shed? My shed even has a gas line to it. So, these are all some concerns we have about listen, I'm all for
It was nice
you
meeting you.
guys. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
all for you guys fixing the place
Yeah.
up, but there's just some concerns that we
Well,
need to address.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
it
Thank you.
sounds like the continuance will allow everybody in the neighborhood to get together and discuss this project, for everybody to determine whose property line is actually where, and all of that good stuff too. So I think we've got a good direction on this. Yes, sir. If you don't mind, name and address for the record and sign in too, please.
Michael Sullivan, 104 Northwest 21st. I just saw the site plan that was presented, and one of my concerns that I have no control over, but I'm sure you guys do, is it identifies maintain existing drainage pattern of surface water from site, slope grade away from the building, finished floor elevation. Okay, so that's a landlocked property. The water right now floods my backyard every time it rains heavy. It floods the backyard of 20th Street every time it rains heavy. That water can't come down.
Sure.
There is no existing drainage other than into our other properties. And to increase the slope and maintain it existing, I mean, if they're going to do that work, I would ask that that be addressed as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wonder, it would add a little bit of cost, but for that survey, if you did a topographical survey, if you got the slope with that survey, that would be helpful. If when you do that survey, if you commission a survey for it, if you get topography, a topographic survey, if you add that they kind of figure out where the slopes is, and, yeah, that would be helpful for the drainage discussion.
Yeah,
So
we could do that.
contours, yeah,
Yeah, the contours of the ground, we can get topographs.
yeah, we'd appreciate that. I think that'd be helpful.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
And if we needed to, we could add drains or whatever it needs.
We have a second.
All right.
So August 3rd? Okay.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Poore. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. The continuance was passed unanimously. We'll move on to item number 9, HPCA 22-00070 at 249 Northwest 35th Street.
This is located in Edgemere Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architecture for Denise Waters for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct 2-story addition, elective. This addition meets all relevant guidelines for size, for materials. The design is compatible with the historic structure. Staff's only concern, and the primary reason that we did recommend continuance, is that the wall of the addition is continuous with the historic structure as proposed. The rear corner, well, all corners of the historic structure have brick coins on them, which is a very distinctive architectural feature. And in setting that wall a little bit would allow that detail to be preserved and would better differentiate the addition from the historic house. The guidelines talk quite a bit about different methods of differentiation. And while sometimes additions and existing structures are so small that it's hard to do much of an inset, we felt like in this instance, this was a good opportunity to perhaps consider that technique and preserve that feature on the corner of the structure.
Thank you, Katie.
Hello
Can
again,
you address the
everyone.
staff's comments, please?
Sure.
Name and address
yeah,
for the record, too, by the way. Sorry about that.
Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architects, 400 Northwest 23rd Street. Yeah, we feel like it's, just like staff said, we thought this would be an easy peasy, a little approval. While we have aligned there, maybe this elevation doesn't really show the intent. The intent here for this brick, and I'd be happy to provide an additional detail, like as a condition of approval if need be, but the original coins on this back corner would be maintained, just like all the original detail of the walls that remain. And what we would do with this brick is use a half brick roll lock and inset it where that coin is still proud, because remember, the coin is proud of the facade of brick. Okay, and so even with the addition brick that aligns, the coin is proud of that. So if we just recess in with this half brick, it'll allow that coin to still be proud and even continue the corner. And we can achieve all of that while still maintaining an interior wall that's continuous. It just makes for a much better approach to construction. Also, and the interior layout. But I wanted to mention in a guideline here, talks about the historic details and coping and eaves and parapet of the historic building may be continued at the point where historic structure connects to the addition. So again, here we inset, like the staff report says, quite a bit on the east side, again, as a way to distinguish and make secondary the addition. But on the other side, since we have that little side porch that's a 2-story element, you can see the back side of it here in this picture. It really, this is the least visible side of the addition, since that protrusion will really block this facade. But so we feel like here a simple but very effective brick detail, like I've described, which again, as a condition, we can happily provide an additional detail. But that coin will be maintained, and the inset will allow it to be proud of the new addition. And I just think it's a much nicer project that way. Even if we were to inset, there's no guarantee that that coin would be maintained and not damaged. I mean, it would take a great deal of effort to maintain it, whereas this, I think, is a really simple but elegant approach to create that clear and defined transition, a clear visual break with a brick detail. So that's our intent. We appreciate all the other staff findings and support, so we hope we can move forward with an approval today.
It sounds, I mean, to me, that sounds like it would effectively differentiate between the new and the old. I think, I'm not sure, you know, you're not moving them, it's not going to be flat right there. You're going to have the original, whatever they're protruding now, you're not touching it. You're going to do like a little, almost like a, are you setting in the brick next to it a little bit? Or
Right,
okay.
exactly. So I did a little, I don't know if this is helpful from your view, but, you know, if this represents the stud wall and this represents the coin, proud of the brick here, then this is that half brick you see inset. So actually
It just kind of
recessed.
accentuates, you know, kind of just highlights that, the original coin.
That's right.
that
And so that
side.
coin corner will be maintained at least, I guess it'd be at least 4 inches. So 4 inches of that corner would be maintained there at that break.
I guess personally that would be enough of a differentiation. I think it'd be pretty clear. I mean, especially because it's a coin, you know that it used to be the corner of a house. I
Yes,
guess. So
precisely.
you know that it's an addition pretty clearly. But I'm speaking for myself. I don't know if my fellow commissioners.
I think I know what you're saying, I agree.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Oh, sorry. I do have a question, because there's 2 drawings of the north elevation shown for the renovation and not one for the south. So I just want to
was
confirm
wondering
that
that.
the south elevation
Oh, you talk,
is not going to be changed.
oh, that's correct. I'm
So
sorry.
even though
That's
it's
absolutely the
missing,
truth.
it's really not missing, but I just wanted to make sure that
Correct.
you didn't need one, but you did put 2 of the other one in, so.
That's right. Yes, there are no changes to the front
So
elevation.
you cannot see the addition from the front.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this? Or any citizens that wish to be heard on this project? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 22-00070 with the specific findings as noted in the staff report, and with a, I'll just make it a condition that you detail the brick at that existing building corner to maintain those coins.
Of course.
Were there additional documents?
And submit that to staff.
Did you say?
Oh, we can also provide window specs to staff that we're in the process of getting those. So
Okay, yeah.
those will certainly
I guess
be
that would be-
forthcoming.
Let me add any conditions as noted in staff, but there aren't any conditions, I guess, so.
Didn't staff need more documentation?
So show a detail for the wall,
And
some remaining window documentation, I guess.
Most of the windows will be relocations of existing. There's just a few new ones proposed, but we'll get those to staff, no problem. They'll be wood and simulated, or I'm sorry, true divided light to match the existing.
Okay. We have a second.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Ryman Phillip, seconded by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. All right. That was passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Good evening.
Okay, last item under cases for individual consideration, HPCA 22-00071 at 108 Northwest 25th Street.
This is located in Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks Creative Home Designs for Kayla Watson, Bad Apple Equities LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct house elective, 2, construct garage elective, 3, install mechanical equipment elective, and 4, install paving elective. Staff did recommend continuance for this application item. There are a number of different, I guess, individually relatively minor issues, but collectively quite a few concerns with the proposal. There are some architectural details and materials that are not fully described. The setback does not appear to be consistent with setbacks at the surrounding properties. Some elements of the paving are not typical of the historic paving patterns that we see in the surrounding neighborhood and block. Several items like that to be addressed. So,
Okay. Are you the applicant?
I am not the applicant. I am a citizen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think about this project.
I would love to tell you what I think about this project.
And we need your name and address for the record too, please.
My name is Chelsea Banks. I live at 112 Northwest 25th, which is abutting this property to the west. I've watched it be a vacant property for several years. I purchased my property in 2016, so it's sat vacant for quite a long time. And I've seen actually another previous owner of the lot itself be unsuccessful in their attempts to put a build on this lot. My main concerns with this actually have to do with there are several mature trees that currently exist on the lot, and by the looks of the plans that have been presented, those would have to be removed. I don't believe that that is a great option for my personal standing on what it looks like to take care of this earth. I also believe that this is a matter of affordable housing as well as it is a new build. I think that the property that is being proposed is far too large for the character of the neighborhood and the block, and the long-term implications of what that looks like for that. For somebody down the road to be able to purchase that property again, it makes it very difficult. So as I've sat and watched, and myself, I've been very interested in what it looks like to have something happen to that lot. This just doesn't seem like the right solution. Myself, my husband, and also our neighbors on the east of this lot they haven't attempted to make contact, but they're also not in favor. We have attempted to make contact with the current owner of the property and have been unsuccessful in that. So one of my requests for this group is to, if there's a continuance or whatever that might look like, to encourage them to communicate with us. We have not had any communication from them at this point in time, and I would love to have neighbors that I can welcome to the neighborhood and tell them these concerns directly. We've just been unsuccessful in having that communication up until this point. I think that's all I have to say.
Perfect. Well, we definitely like it when neighbors communicate with one another in these types of scenarios. I think there are several items in the staff report that address the way that the house will sit on the lot. I don't know if that solves the problem with the trees, but could potentially solve it. With the applicant not being here, likely just needs a continuance. But certainly we'll take those items into consideration if and when they show up next time.
I'm just curious, what is the square footage of the proposed new house? What?
It's just shy of 2,500, and every other house on the block is less than 1,400. So it's almost double the square footage of all of the houses nearby. Additionally, it's, by the looks of it, the setback is not as far back as my house, and it would also be much larger than the physical house that I'm in. So I would see quite a lot of house that doesn't currently exist from my back window.
Any other questions?
No, if we continued it, would it be probably August, I guess? Or have you had any communication with the applicant, or what's?
I have not heard from the applicant since the packet went out. No, we haven't heard anything from them. So
I would say August
possibly
3rd.
I would say August, especially with the next meeting being the week of a holiday.
All right, I'll make a motion to continue HPCA 22-00071 to the August 3rd hearing.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Commissioner Ryman Phillips, second by Commissioner Poore. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Okay, that continuance was passed unanimously. We will move on to item number 7. Katie, any new business or any other business we need to discuss today?
We have no action items under other business.
Okay, anything under communications and reports that we need to visit about? Administrative approvals, looks like we have 10 of them.
Nothing special to report out. As always, if you guys have questions about things that have been administratively approved, feel free to reach out to staff. These do get posted online, and we're happy to answer any questions.
And it looks like nothing for 8B, C, D. We do have something from the Board of Adjustments, correct?
Yes, so there's nothing on the agenda, but I did want to report out that we had one case from a couple of meetings ago that was appealed, 20-00182. It was the landscape edging and rock landscape material in the front yard of a property that went to Board of Adjustment in May or in April. And our decision, the commission's decision was overturned. So that was approved by Board of Adjustment.
Was that the property on 30th?
Yes.
Which one?
It was on 30th. It was that, it sat across from, I'm trying to think of the new 30th Street Market. I'm trying to think of that cross street that's just
Just
right
down
there.
from 30th and Walker, right across from.
There's that
like,
struggle bus.
Yes,
Yes.
boutique. Yes, it's right next door, which I think
Yep.
Struggle Bus is kind of a commercial property and.
Correct.
It's a
Yep.
property that was like all paved, they put in the stone.
Right.
And
Yep. So the denial of that was overturned. You may or may not have noticed on the consent docket that property was back. They are going to put the slope of the yard back to the historic condition. So they'll take the rock off, restore the slope of the yard, and then put the rock back in. So just wanted to update everyone on that. The other item that went to Board of Adjustment recently was a home sharing application that was in Jefferson Park. And I wasn't at I was at the Board of Adjustment meeting. I was not at the HP Commission meeting. And there was some confusion about the fact that the property is zoned HL and not HP. The rules that we typically discuss where a property owner is required to have the home share that is their primary residence and that they are on site at the time of the home share only applies in districts that are zoned with HP-based zoning, because the HP-based zone governs their use and they're getting a special exception for a use in the base zone. With HL, that is an overlay, and the home sharing rules apply as per whatever their base zoning is. In an HL district, the owner does not have to be on site. It does not have to be their primary residence. If it's not their primary residence, then they do have to come through the process for a special exception, but they're not required to be on site. So the Board of Adjustment was somewhat confused by the Commission's recommendation. They ended up continuing they met the day after this meeting, so they had not had time to listen to the actual meeting. They just had the written recommendation from staff. They continued that home sharing application to their next meeting so that the board could listen to the meeting and hear the protests that were made. Ultimately, they did go ahead and approve the special exception for the home share. I think they have to come back within a year, or they gave them a fairly short window of time before they have to come back and reapply for the special exception so they can reevaluate the concerns that some of the neighbors expressed. But I just wanted to clarify with you guys what those rules are for home sharing. And I think you all know this, but there seemed to be some confusion amongst property owners and folks that were speaking at the meeting that HL and HP are equivalent. They're equally significant. They're equally protected by the commission. It's just a matter of whether or not they regulate use is the only difference. Some folks seem to have the impression that HL was kind of a step down from HP, and it's not. And we value those neighborhoods just as much and hold them to the same standards as we do the ones that are HP. So just wanted to clarify that. We do have a workshop, this is under next meeting date, but we do have a workshop scheduled for next week, and we do plan on actually having that. I'll send out an email to confirm attendance, but want to talk a little bit more about the home sharing stuff for folks that aren't here, if they're able to attend, and then also looking at some code update work in relation to urban medium areas, urban core neighborhoods. So that's the plan for the workshop. That's all I have.
Anything, is that part of the Planning Commission, or is that?
That's just me
That's just
continuing
you.
to talk.
Anything from the Planning Commission?
No.
Rita, anything from the Municipal Counselor's Office? Okay, our next regularly scheduled meeting date for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, July 6th at 2 p.m. in City Council's chambers. New applications for this meeting were received May 31st. New information on projects continued from today's meeting for the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, June 7th. The next regularly scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission, as Katie noted, is Wednesday, June 8th from 11:30 to 1:30 at 420 West Main Street. Any commissioners, any items from commissioners that need to be addressed? Any citizens that wish to be heard? The meeting is adjourned.